All right, we are officially live. Welcome everyone to the Green Cabbage Chopping It Up live sessions. My name is Natalie Plastro. I'm the head of marketing at Green Cabbage, and this is the first of our new Chopping It Up with Green Cabbage session. Today we're going to focus on clinical procurement, and there's no better person to join me than the president of clinical operations at Green Cabbage, Tom Johnson.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Johnson. I have an extensive experience in clinical procurement. I spent about 30 years procuring technology and other healthcare related services and solutions for large health systems. Today, our agenda will be we'll define what clinical really means to us at Green Cabbage. We'll talk about some of the examples of the categories that we're procuring for our customers. And then we're going to really dive into the trends we're seeing, which I think is important, that we're sharing current information and how we see procurement in the clinical space evolving. And then we'll take a pause and answer some questions from the audience during our Q&A session.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. We're very excited to launch this series on our LinkedIn Live. Really just about bringing the information and the trends to light on a platform that's accessible to everyone. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Tom, do you really just want to unpack what clinical procurement is and what we mean by this?
Yeah, it's a very broad category of procurement. So our clinical services support a very wide range of companies covering what I call the entire life cycle that healthcare providers rely on to deliver quality patient care. We support organizations that are in the life sciences space that are conducting clinical trials, developing new medications, maybe implants, medical devices. We support hospitals, health systems, the wholesalers and distributors that supply them, as well as even health insurance companies.
Now, can you take it a step further and define what categories are contained within clinical procurement?
Yeah, some examples would be clinical software, data quality, data management, health information technology, EMRs, ERP systems, that kind of thing, pharmaceuticals. We support laboratories, radiology, clinical research, and a lot of other ancillary spend would be in that category.
Now, for those that may not be as familiar with the category, are you able to provide some suppliers within those as well, and where we've been able to see the most drive for savings in these suppliers?
Sure. So as you can imagine, it's with the big spend, right? The 80% is concentrated with 20% of the vendors. Like in the hospital space, healthcare space, you might see Cerner, Epic, Meditech, GE, Siemens, Philips, 3M, Nuance, McKesson, IBM, some of the big medical device manufacturers, Medtronic, J&J, blah, 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 on and on. It's a huge list that are in this space.
Right. Now, switching gears a little bit here, Green Cabbage is all about spend reduction, using our data network and expertise to drive these outcomes in what we already focus in. So indirect technology, human capital, and now clinical procurement as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important to get involved in clinical procurement if it's already such a crowded space?
Yeah, as you said, we started in spend analytics and market intelligence for indirect technology. A lot of those customers happen to also be in the clinical space. So they wanted us to utilize those same skills and technologies to help them improve their spend for clinical procurement. And that's kind of where my journey started with Green Cabbage. I got involved a little over a year ago, started to build out this division, and really started to help leverage my background, skills, and expertise in clinical procurement for our customers that are in the clinical space. So it's a natural marriage, and it's evolved very nicely to where we're at today.
Yeah, and I think I know there's a lot of consistency, right? So we take a look at quite a few software contracts within Pass 360 and Green Cabbage. Can you give some examples of what those contracts look like within clinical procurement?
Sure. So electronic medical records, like I was talking about, Cerner, Epic, GE, Athena Health, NextGen. There's a lot of different systems in the hospital space. There's a massive amount in the physician practice management space. ERP systems, Oracle, Infor, Workday, that's another big one. Lab and imaging, there's a lot of spend in that area. If you think of like big MRI machines, CT machines, PET CT, ultrasound, it just goes on and on and on. And then a lot of the ancillary software, compliance, audit, coding, revenue cycle management, the pharmaceuticals, all the wholesaling. It's a massive spend. Remember,
Right.
healthcare is 1/3 of the GDP of the US.
Yeah, massive amounts of spend.
Yes.
And I think that utilizing the methodology that we've put in place, that compress of leveraging market intelligence, having knowledge and expertise, like former CIOs like yourself, and then utilizing our executive networks within these mega suppliers to drive these outcomes are really what's creating change in all categories, not just indirect technology, not just human capital, but now clinical as well. I think some of the trends that we're seeing within the clinical category remain consistent with what we see in others. And we really wanted to outline some of those today and see, okay, where are these opportunities for savings? What are we seeing across the board? So just to get right into it, I mean, everyone's feeling inflationary pressures, but procurement workloads will increase by about 10.6% in 2023 with lower headcount. This is without wage increases, of course, so staff are expected to use technology to deal with these increased workloads. How are you able to combat this within utilizing a clinical procurement resource like Green Cabbage?
Yeah, the concern is, what are organizations going to do about this, right? So why is this happening? We know why it's happening. We're in recession. We see massive inflation. Organizations have to deal with it, right? Their margins are squeezed. Maybe they're negative margins. You're not going to get increased headcount. You're not going to give it additional wage increases to existing staff. You have to use and leverage existing technology, is what they're being told, basically, to deal with it. That puts a lot of pressure on the existing staff and can cause more turnover and make the matters even worse. So a focus on talent management, investing in your best people, making sure they're not leaving, making sure they have the tools they need to be able to be more efficient, to find and drive automation throughout the procurement lifecycle, leveraging procure to pay and other integrations between ancillary departments is going to be very important. And that's one of the focuses of our model, is to be truly an extension of our clients' procurement staff to really help them kind of drive this efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, really free up time. So it's not only hard dollar savings, but it's time savings that they can reinvest into the innovation, into their people, and then grow and combat these inflationary pressures, really. I mean, we're seeing this is a priority across the board. Moving right into our next trend that we're seeing, C-suite, their top priority is spend optimization and combating these price increases in inflation like we just talked about. So spending discipline is being enforced and staff are being asked to do more as the expectation without increasing these salaries. How are you able to combat this? What have you seen within this?
Yeah, this happens across the boards. And for people that were in business during the last recession in 2007 to 2009, layoffs happen, expenses are cut organizational wide 10 to 20%. And you go into your contracts database and you reopen them all up, right? So you're going to go back to your vendors and say, hey, I know we have a contract in place, but we're hurting. We're trying to deal with this inflation. We need to change the terms and conditions. Can you extend better payment terms? Can you limit our increases? Can you be more flexibility? Give us more flexibility. And sometimes these negotiations become very contentious. They're not fun. I've had to do this numerous times. and you're asking for things and the vendors kind of, laugh in your face like, yeah, how are we supposed to do that? But I will say that you can't kill your vendors in the process. You can't threaten and say, hey, well, if you're not going to help us, we'll find other vendors that can help us. Because ultimately down the road, 18 months, 24 months from now, and you need those vendors, you need their help, you want to make sure somebody's answering that phone call when you're making it. So if you're going to go back to the vendors and open up the contracts and you're going to ask for something, you need to be prepared. You need to be armed with the latest pricing information, the latest market intelligence about that vendor, about the trends that are happening with that vendor. Are they gaining new customers? Are they losing customers? Are they giving concessions to other customers? Be armed with good current information and be prepared with an ask that's justifiable. Because ultimately, they have to go to their boss and say, hey, let's help out this customer. They've been a good long-term customer. Let's give them an olive branch. And don't just say, we're struggling with inflation, so give us a big discount, right? Go armed with information that can help you get it done and protect that relationship, right? You want some kind of win-win scenario, not just, hey, we take everything and you lose. That generally doesn't work.
Right. And it's in that nature, it's promoting proactive procurement methods, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of the very reactionary, this contract got thrown on my desk the day of, which is what most organizations are faced with, and don't even know that they have the opportunity to reopen that up. So it's something that's extremely important when we're thinking about having these conversations. With that being said, procurement's being asked to claw back the increases they paid over the last 3 years. What does this process typically look like right now? And how can we change that to a more proactive approach?
Yeah. It's a brutal process to go to your vendors and say, hey, we paid, 10% increases over the past 3 years. We need that back. Legally, you're probably not going to prevail, but theoretically it can be done. And typically the way you're going to do that is you're going to offer something in exchange. It has to be a give and take. We have done it and it can be done, but usually we're going to add some licenses, we're going to extend terms. You have to offer something in good faith and build that long-term goodwill. Right. Because remember, this organization you're talking to is probably an extension of your company, right? They're your supplier, they're your vendor. If they go away, you're going to have a tough time doing business. Yes, you can probably find a different supplier, but the more you churn suppliers, the more gaps you're going to have in that relationship. And you're not going to have the people that are going to help you out at the 11th hour when you're down and out and you need a favor. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to claw back increases, but it can be done. And again, I just remind people, try to maintain those relationships. Don't kill your vendors unless there's just no other choice.
Yeah. It's all about promoting these sustainable relationships with each of the suppliers. We find that the suppliers are more successful when their clients are more successful, right? Clients grow, suppliers grow, SKU count increases, head count increases. So we want to maintain these relationships for a positive relationship to grow together, not just one or the other. With that, final trend that we're really seeing is procurement being asked to show their value and present their savings in objective financial terms. So what does this look like? Can we unpack this one a little bit more?
Yeah, it's not always top of mind to leaders in procurement to do this, because when things are going well, nobody asks for this, right? When things are tough, then you're being asked to justify your existence. So, and you can say, oh, we saved tons of money for the organization. I'm like, okay, prove it. Show us your value proposition. What are the metrics you use? Are there industry metrics and ratios that you can look at and say, nationally, this is how we compare to other organizations that are like size, like operations, apple to apples. And it's tough to do. And to look at your volumes, to get survey data for your internal customers, to show qualitative and quantitative. Here's how we measure up internally as well as to other organizations. And you need a voice at the top, right? You need to have a voice at the table with the senior leaders where you're constantly and continuously educating them on the value that you're driving to the business. Yes, savings is important, but what are the other key metrics that you're using? So, and you can't just start this when a recession hits. It needs to be something that's part of your strategic plan, that you're building those relationships up at the top and providing that continuous education so that it's already known, right? It's just
Right.
maybe a small pivot or a tweak, but you can compare yourself internally and externally is super important.
Right.
And do it financially and gain some financial savvy in the process just adds to your credibility as a
Yeah.
leader in the procurement space.
I mean, we talk about alignment all the time. It's one of the most important aspects, but um, really just being aligned internally to make sure that each department is hitting goals in the other's terms. It's
Mhm.
so important. And we'll talk a little bit about green cabbage later, but implementing solutions that can show that value without you having to go back through months, years of history to find that value is extremely important, which is why we believe that leveraging spend analytics tools that simplify this process is just one of the best things you can do to drive alignment internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap things up and talk a little bit about green cabbage clinical procurement, we want to open things up to the audience for a few questions, if there are any. So we'll take a moment here, let a few questions filter in about anything for Tom or myself.
Okay.
Let's see here. Right.
Only simple ones, please.
All right, first one. You mentioned don't kill your vendors a few times. Why is it important when you're fighting to save jobs and maintain budgets to prove your value?
Um, yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit. I understand sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're fighting for your jobs, like in the question, maybe you may be at risk of being eliminated. Your organization may be at risk of going under. Right? I understand sometimes there's no choice, but it's so important to maintain goodwill and relationships with your key vendors and suppliers and the people you work with every day so that they pick up the phone and help you. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation where I needed an extra part. There's additional fees in the contract. They send the part anyhow, they waive the fees. I've had critical parts go out of maintenance. Like 2 days after the contract expired, the part dies. Like a
Yeah,
$30,000 part on a weekend, right? And I'm calling the vendor and I'm like, yeah, you've been a good customer. We'll just include it in the maintenance contract. We'll take care of it, right? So they don't have to do that stuff for you.
right.
It's outside the terms and conditions of the agreed upon contract, but the relationships and I'll call it goodwill that you've built is so valuable to your company. Like how much did they save me, not only in time and frustration, but when we have a downtime at a large health system on a weekend and I'm at a wedding, and I can call somebody on their cell phone and they ship the part
Yeah,
that's out of maintenance. So it's those kind of scenarios that just are so valuable that you kill those vendors, you kill those relationships. You
exactly.
don't have that cell phone number anymore to call. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah, that's great. We just had another one come in. What are the typical KPI or metrics of a healthy procurement organization from your point of view?
You want to look at obviously that your volumes, right? So how much you're processing as far as the types of business you're doing, the value you're driving as far as cost avoidance and cost savings, your head count based on total dollars spent comparing other organizations. So if you have $100 million in spend, can you compare yourself to other organizations that have $100 million in spend? How many staff people do you have? What's your turnaround time? So there are a lot of different metrics that you can capture. I would try to look to independent research organizations and other benchmark organizations so that you have very objective measures, but I pretty much have summarized them then there for you. Because you don't want people to question the independent nature of the information you're giving, right? You want to make sure you can share that.
Right. And we're going to talk a little bit about benchmarking and the relevance and importance in this. Final questions. What factors should be considered besides costs before we get into benchmarking?
There are so many factors. The overall relationship is super important. Obviously, cost is important. You want to look at business terms. You want to look at legal terms. You want to look at SLAs. You want to look at the totality of the contract and say, is this contract supporting our overall goals? Price is just one small component. I would gladly pay more if I'm going to get an overall better benefit from the supplier. What if I have very specific project managers that I want on the account? Hard to get project managers I've worked with in the past. Would I pay more? Quite likely. If it's a software contract that has a lot of different user license components and counts, maybe I want additional language in there that allows me to true up and reshuffle the deck on those. Too many times organizations get way out of whack with their user counts versus what they're actually using, and they're locked in. They're paying maintenance. So find the right balance of business terms, legal terms, payment terms, and the flexibility that you need to suit your business. That's the best way I would describe it. And remember, a contract is a piece of paper that is reflective of your overall organizational goals and strategies, as well as the vendor and suppliers you're working with. So make sure to keep that in context as you're looking at it.
Right. Awesome. All right. Well, let's just close things off and talk a little bit about how some of Green Cabbage current clients are utilizing the clinical procurement application for benchmarking those terms and conditions, as well as the network and expertise.
Sure. So what we're doing at Green Cabbage, we're utilizing spend analytics to really take your contracts in a secure manner into our portal. It's called One Workspace. We're going to benchmark that using SKU-based reference data, not survey data. We're going to give you savings targets, and we're also going to do market intelligence. So what's market intelligence? Let me dive into that a little bit. Researching the vendors that you're working with, their competitors, the market. Maybe if you have preferred vendors, are they gaining market share? Are they losing market share? Are they gaining key customer accounts? Are people leaving the organization? These are super important factors that you need to know if you're going to go into a price negotiation. When's their end of quarter? When's their end of fiscal year? What type of discounts are they offering other customers? So I use the word intel, market intelligence broadly, but there's a lot that goes into that research. Again, we want to arm our customers with the latest and best information to help them get the best overall deal. Business terms, legal terms, pricing are just components of it. You want the best overall deal.
Right.
And, we also have customer success managers that will assign to the account. Again, we want to be an extension of your procurement team, help you reach your goals, whether they're savings goals, whether you want to get deals done faster. We're really good at compressing the deal cycle.
Yeah.
Get more deals done more efficiently, gain cost savings. That's really the key of what we're looking at.
Yeah. And just to jump in,
go ahead.
all of that being included with the guarantee, right? So we're going to identify what that guaranteed number is, and then provide these benchmarks at the micro SKU level. So it's a matter of unpacking what's in that bundled pricing across the board and making sure that the market intelligence being used is the most relevant, up to date, to help secure those optimal agreements, not just the pricing, but the business and legal terms as well.
Absolutely. And the other factor I'll add is that, yes, we have technology, but we also have really good people that have worked for a lot of the vendors that have written the language around pricing. So it's the balance between our technology and our people and the connections we have at the highest level with a lot of the organizations we're working with, that we can pick up the phone and say, hey, President of Sales of the United States, we have a customer here that we're working on for a deal, and get the deal done. Because what you don't want to have is these deals dragging on 6-9 months a year. Things fall apart, and you get outside the contract terms and conditions, and then people want to start bringing in lawyers, and then that's not the way to do business, right? We like to compress the deal and get it done, and that's beneficial for both sides. And that's really, I think, part of the reason we've been successful with our customers.
Right. And all of that, with all of that being said, it's meeting our customers' definition of savings, right? So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
hard dollar savings, however it's defined, and working to meet that goal and truly serve as an extension of your team. We use the analogy a lot. We'll either sit in the passenger seat and drive you all the way to the finish line, or we'll sit in the back seat and provide that coaching, but we really work as an extension of that client's procurement.
Correct. Think of this, Natalie. When I was a busy CIO, and end of year, a lot of contracts will be expiring, right? So I get this huge stack of contracts on my desk. Time becomes the most important factor for me, right? Do you think I have
Right.
time to read all those contracts, analyze all the terms, negotiate pricing? Time, right? So having partners that can help do that process, especially in a more automated way, becomes very valuable.
Right. All right. Well, with all of that, this has been our first Chopping It Up with Green Cabbage. We do want to extend out an invitation for anyone who's interested to learn more by filling out the form, which I will throw up in the chat, about our Fund Your Project initiative. So if you fill out the form that will be placed there, we'll schedule some time to meet and provide some more information about some of our upcoming initiatives and how we can work together for clinical procurement within Green Cabbage. But thank you, Tom, for joining me on today's session. And we really look forward to hearing from everyone and hearing the feedback.
Had a great time. It was fun. Let's do it again soon.
All right. This is Chopping It Up with Green Cabbage.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.